Hello for joining us for another week of Red Lotus Life and the Embodiment Workshop. So this has been really fun. If you're new to Red Lotus Life, we do workshops every single month, free workshops where we do clearing sessions, and then we take a month to integrate them. We had just unpacked the clear last week. Now we're diving deeper into something different. I want to recap on the clear really quick. So the clear was embodiment clear, and the emotional block was sympathy in the area of family love. So last week, you can go check out that video. We literally unpacked that clear and just dissected it piece by piece on what the emotional path was and what it meant. And this week, we're going to be diving deeper into sympathy and red flags. So as always, I have Sarah Hoffman here, who is the co-creator with me of Red Lotus Life. It has been crazy. I think it's been 2 weeks now, probably since about 10 days, probably since we met last to film for this. I can't even tell you, I feel like I'm on this launch pad and I'm just launching out into space right now. It's on fast forward.
Quantum leaping.
Definitely quantum leaping. And the embodiment piece has still been blowing my mind. Everything is so vivid. The food tastes so good. I can literally see patterns in nature everywhere and signs of life, which is crazy too.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I'm really noticing is just a really heightened sense of sympathy and really noticing those places where there's either a lack of resonance or a resonance with, which is the definition that we've been using for the clear as far as sympathy is concerned. Because when we're talking about embodiment, which is what we did the clear around, of course, that literally is the difference. So as we're clearing space in the body in order to allow our souls to descend, then the things that are keeping us from either resonating with or resonating or lack of resonance, that's what's keeping us from being in our body as a collective. So I'm really, really noticing where I have some sympathy or heightened senses of sympathy as compared to where there's less sympathy, and how is that creating a divide?
Oh, it's a big divide too. As you're talking about it, I mean, you and I have been talking throughout the last few days. We talk every day, but we've been talking a lot about how it is creating this huge gap on where we're in alignment and where we aren't. So having that sympathy and that resonance with, and then 100% seeing where you're not in resonance with, where you're not in alignment. And that gap keeps widening further and further. So I'm really excited that we're going to be talking about sympathy and the red flags. I know we've been talking a lot about red flags. If you're watching this after the fact, we had done an entire workshop on red flags. That's actually in the Red Lotus Life membership now. So if you can't find it on the channel, that's why. But we have gone into depth into red flags, and then we were asked to go deeper by somebody, by a viewer. So that's what sparked this embodiment. And so we are going to go deeper into red flags here, but it's in a totally different context than what you're used to seeing from us, because this has to do with, it's in direct connection with integrating this clear on embodiment that is sympathy with red flags. So when resonance with or resonance without. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about before I share this infographic and we dive in?
There's always something I want to talk about. Let's go ahead and share the infographic.
Okay.
I'll share things along the way.
Amazing. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. All right. So embodiment, sympathy, and the red flag.
Okay, so on this first section, we're looking at the how are we actually defining a red flag? So red flags are warning signals or triggers which identify a lack of resonance, so not sympathy, with values and belief systems. And this is something to be looking at within your relationships. And how are they creating, or are they creating, an imbalance of power? Is there an absence of emotional intelligence? Is there physical, emotional, even verbal abuse or mental abuse present? And these can be conscious or unconscious behaviors. So the person who we might be in a dynamic with, I just think it's really, really important to point out that they are also operating from a place of conditioning, may have trauma, childhood experiences that are actually causing these behaviors. And because of lack of education, or there's a whole host of reasons, they may not even be aware that they are exhibiting these traits. And you may not actually either. And they also may create feelings, or actually by the time you're in the place where you're experiencing red flags, or you're noticing the red flags, you're going to be feeling these feelings of not safe and contraction.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you'd like to learn more, then you can definitely go check out all the things that we have on red flags on the channel. And also we invite you to come and dive deeper into the membership group, because we go deep into the clearings and everything else there. So.
Yeah, sharing personal experiences and, just going deeper, generally speaking. Okay, so the next part is looking at red flags that you're seeing within yourself. So we're not only feeling into the sensations in our body, but we're looking at where are we actually dismissing our own boundaries and belief systems? Where are we minimizing hurtful actions by another person and giving away our power, agency, and autonomy? So from this space, we are not in our sovereignty. And these are also things that are going to be rooted in our own conditioning and trauma, and can lead to that place of disassociation, which we've been speaking about. It's so important to be aware of these red flags, both in self and others.
I really like this one, because there are the red flags in ourself. And as we become more embodied, we start to recognize. So as you're integrating this clear that we just barely did, you're going to start to notice where you begin to start dismissing your own boundaries and beliefs, and what that looks like and what that feels like. And it doesn't feel good in the body. You can tell. It's like this icky feeling that comes over whenever you start to realize that you're not holding your boundaries or your beliefs. And then same with that minimizing hurtful actions. I mean, I can't even tell you. The second that you start doing this deep work and you start doing emotional clearing with healing around domestic violence and abuse, you can tell immediately when you are minimizing someone else's behaviors. And you're starting to just, it's like a betrayal of self, betrayal of the soul. It is such a contracting feeling of recognizing where you're not showing up for self. And then that is definitely giving away the power, the agency, and the autonomy. Is not sovereign. And to be honest with you, when you start to become embodied and you're starting to connect with these emotions, they can start to come out sideways. So you are definitely not in a sovereign place, and you could definitely be everything coming out sideways. Yeah. That's how it's been in my experience, and with some of the clients that I've worked with in the beginning, this is exactly how it feels.
Yeah. And then you might even start to feel some feelings of guilt or shame because these things are starting to come up, and you're having the awareness, but you've never been in the body before. You've never had those awarenesses before. And actually, these red flags have been coming up probably since childhood. And you weren't aware of them until you are.
Yep. Yes. So the guilt, the shame, all of those things feeling dirty. I mean, anything like that can definitely come up because it is so deeply rooted. It's deeply rooted from childhood. So I love that we're actually even defining the difference between red flags that we see in others. This in self is huge, especially with embodiment.
Yeah, and these things can show up as far as, someone dictating whether you can go to work or not, dictating whether you can go to school or not. Like if you're someone who's young and you're in a relationship, it might be the dictating around like what you're wearing, the way you're dressed, whether or not you're even allowed to leave the house. I mean, it shows up in these really, really small ways, and then it begins to exacerbate and get bigger and and a lot more extreme.
Yeah, it really does. And it can be something as simple as even shaming around food or what you're eating or how you're wearing your hair. And this can happen with both men and women. I've recently had a lot of talks actually with a lot of men that also start to experience this in their partnerships and starting to realize, oh, okay, so it's really when it comes to this embodiment, this right here, what we're talking about is the red flags with self, which is so very, very different, I feel.
Yeah,
because usually we're looking at it from others, right?
Yeah, it's very, very different. And so as we're beginning to come into the body and we're beginning to integrate, because what really is embodiment is integration. We're learning to embody this sympathy, and we're going to begin to, see the resonance of, okay, so this person might be actually acting from a place that is due to conditioning, but are we going too far one way or the other? So if we're like really, really in sympathy with this person and the reasons why that they are acting the way that they're acting, then we're going to be giving our power away. Whereas if we are not in resonance with them, we are not in sympathy with them, and we're going the complete opposite direction, then we're creating a divide.
Yep. Amazing. Anything more on this one? Whoops.
I don't think so.
Zero clue what that was about. We've been having tech issues all day long. Okay.
Okay, so this next portion on relationship red flags, this is just generally speaking, just a few things that are really, really common, and they are really common in both parties. Like jealousy can show up in really any relationship, right? And that can look like something that's showing up for us in a healthy pattern, something that we can take a look at or we can have a conversation around, or it can be the extreme and really, really, really create suspicion and mistrust that escalates into bigger issues. The next thing is codependency. Codependency is something that shows up in relationships so often, also really deeply rooted in childhood for the most part. And it's basically just an unhealthy dependence in relationships or on relationships. It also creates an imbalance. The next thing being invalidation. So invalidation is actually insinuating that one shouldn't feel a certain way, which is so different from gaslighting. And gaslighting is, again, another one of those that we have talked about in the workshop in the past and gone really in depth about. But gaslighting actually makes one believe that they do not actually feel the way that they feel, whereas invalidation is like, say you're trying to express that you feel a certain way, there's a certain emotion present, and you'd like to discuss that, and you're being told you really shouldn't feel that, or there's no reason for you to be sad, or there's no reason for you to be angry, and none of your feelings are being acknowledged. So there is a distinction there.
Yeah, there's some pretty extreme ones. When I look at this, I can think of so many extreme situations that I've experienced. I like how you are talking about how like there can be this balance, right? It's this balance. That's what we keep bringing into play here. There's a balance. There are forms of jealousy that aren't necessarily abusive,
Right.
but when it tips that balance, then that's when it does become abusive. That is when it does become unsafe or creates trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So I've shared this in the past whenever we've talked about red flags around jealousy. And I've just shared how, when I was so naive in the beginning with, I've been in a few different relationships, as we all have, right? With domestic violence, it is a cycle. And until you start to recognize that cycle and that pattern, that's whenever we start to break it. We start to live differently. We start to create different choices. For me, mine started when I was young and when I was like preteen and teen. And I just remember in the beginning, like I was so naive thinking, oh, this certain types of jealousy, I actually thought was because they really enjoyed me and enjoyed being around me and this is why they didn't want me hanging out with other people and things like that. And it's not until you find, and I say you, meaning me, I find myself kicked out of a truck and left into a parking lot in a group full of guys that are in a convenience store parking lot just because I was glancing that way as we drove down the street. So never was even looking at anybody, and who cares if I was, but all of a sudden finding myself literally like open the door, kicked out. My ride just sped off because he thought that I was interested in this group of guys. So there's obviously that is an unbalance, right? That's an imbalance
Right.
of things. So I think it's really important that we talk about a lot of these different things because we're not coming from a place of victim. We're coming from a place of sovereignty, right? This is what we're working towards, especially as we're integrating these clears, because these clears are super intense. So, and I love that you brought up, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I love that you brought up actually not coming from a place of victim, because while yes, we have been in that place, but I think as we're coming into the body and as we're integrating, if we can begin to see things from a place of non-attachment, see things from a place of observer, and not necessarily good or bad, like in the moment, so that we can be able to distinguish, where we are and get out of sort of the heat of the moment and the chaos. Like take a step back and detach from the situation, so that you can even focus a little bit to try to move forward or into a different place, make a different choice.
There's a big difference when we come from a state of victim and emotion and commotion versus a state of sovereignty when we are able to see that reality, begin to make different choices. Which is, this is actually why I like how you brought up this invalidation and really distinguishing the difference between invalidation and gaslighting. Because again, this is one of those things that people, when you're looking for these common flags and you're trying to find examples on what does this mean? I was one of these people, so this is why I bring it up. I was one of these people that did not know what gaslighting was. Literally had to look it up and say, okay, what is gaslighting? So I looked it up and no one can really define it. That's why we go so deep into what does this look and feel like, because no one could really do that. And I was still just, I had an idea of what it was, but I'll be honest, I thought invalidation and gaslighting were kind of the same thing until we really started diving deeper into what exactly this means. And invalidation is very different. It's insinuating that one shouldn't feel a certain way. So you're explaining, or you're feeling a certain way, or you're trying, and you're being told that you shouldn't feel that way. You're being shamed, you're being guilted, whatever that might be, on why you shouldn't feel a certain way. Where gaslighting is that they're literally saying you don't, like, this didn't happen. You don't feel this way.
Right, exactly. I guess it's just very nuanced. And that's the thing, like when you're talking about being one of those people who didn't know what it meant, I was also that person. And think that most of us are, because when you are talking about so many nuances within a relationship dynamic, and especially when it's stuff that happens very, very often and it just feels normal, then you don't know the difference because that's just normal to you. That's your reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it literally took somebody else bringing these terms into my awareness when I would explain or share what was happening in my life, and realizing that this wasn't normal, because it was so normal to me for so long that I didn't realize that this wasn't a normal situation.
Yeah. And so that's another place where if you are able to take a step back and not be so attached to the chaos, then you can start to actually see where the gaslighting or invalidation or, all of these different aspects are showing up for you. And that, from that place, you can, again, start to do something different, notice how it feels in your body, and, find ways to come back into alignment, regulate your nervous system, and make whatever the next right choice is for you, the most next aligned choice.
Mm-hmm.
Not from a place of necessarily judgment, but just what is best for you.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Okay, so the next little section is also on relationship red flags, but these are going to be, instead of more directed towards like what could be common or present in both people, this is more directed at like what you might be noticing in the other person. So love bombing is a very, very, very classic way that a person who is trying to manipulate or gain control in a relationship really, really quickly to gain trust, and then promptly devaluing. And in the beginning, that process is quite a bit longer, but then it starts to be like clockwork, and it's over and over and over and over again. And it really, really does start this emotionally abusive cycle that we really have to watch out for, because it sends you on a roller coaster. You're on a roller coaster ride, up and down, up and down. It's very dysregulating. And it's very confusing, and it kind of puts you in this place where you're looking for the love bombing, you're looking for the attention, you're looking for the affection, but it's never shown in the same way because it was never really real in the first place. And then another thing that's really, really common, and Lori and I have been talking about, like, this is one of those things that's not talked about, but it's very, very common in this type of relationship. So it's interrogation. So it's this bullying and wearing down process where the targets slowly learn to accept, because it just becomes easier after you're so worn down and you just don't want to deal with it and everything's chaos. It becomes easier to just go ahead and answer than resist or experience the repercussions that you already, like, you're already trained. They've already trained you. They're coming. And so you do anything you can to just sort of minimize. And again, that's going back to what we were saying in the first is, minimizing hurtful behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this love bombing, this is very much part of that honeymoon cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are probably really familiar with that term of the honeymoon cycle. The love bombing is something, again, I found myself being so naive. It started early on, right? Early on in my preteen and teens, this love bombing of when somebody is so overly into you, right? They're over, and we're conditioned by a society to, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this because I do want to talk a little deeper into, in fact, I'm going to write these down really quick: love bombing and interrogation, so I don't forget. So we're conditioned by a society with all of the Hollywood, like, love stories, all the, just the romance novels, all of that, to think that that's what love is. And so when you're receiving that, When you're on the receiving end of that, and all of a sudden you are just being so romanced, there's flowers and there's poems and there's gifts and chocolates, and you're being taken on these amazing places, and it's happening so fast. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like this person is really into me. And it doesn't matter if you're male, female, it doesn't matter. It's the same process that ends up happening. You're right. It happens like it's just in the beginning, it seems slower, like that cycle seems slower because you're love bombed and you're just, and to build trust, right? And fall in love and develop these emotions and all of these things. And then all of a sudden, it's like the bottom drops out of it. You've done something wrong and now you're being punished for it. There's a huge, it's almost as if like the love bombing was so big. That falling out that happens where the bottom falls out of your little, like the bubble pops of your love bubble, the same extreme happens on the other side. And that extreme is all of a sudden you have done the worst thing ever. And how could you? And the argument is so extreme and not like an argument you've ever had before. Like this is the type of stuff that ends up happening. And then all of a sudden, now this is where the honeymoon cycle comes in. And all of a sudden it's like, now we're going to make up and it's going to be extravagant gifts and all the things. And I'm so sorry. And all of that. And then exactly what you said about this roller coaster ride. After a while, it just becomes textbook. And after a while, you're looking for the love bombing. And then you're also looking for the bottom to drop out. You're like literally looking for it because you're expecting it to happen. And I got to a point where I go, it's been so many months now. We're bound, we're due for something big to happen here. And then that's when you're walking on eggshells again. You're walking on eggshells because you don't want it to happen.
Yeah. And you're also like your body, your mind, your nervous system is also craving the love bombing because again, it's like this is a trauma bond cycle and it becomes like an addiction cycle, just like with, drugs or alcohol. It is the exact same type of thing. And I've even seen it happen in my experience, not just like a few months apart, but like a day, a nighttime, a daytime, nighttime, daytime, nighttime, daytime. Like the cycle just up and down, up and down. Love bombing, devaluing, love bombing, devaluing.
Yeah. And I don't know, this can also look like I've had a couple of conversations today that has been fascinating that goes right along with what we're talking about here. But this one, it was interesting because it is the trauma bond, right? So it is the trauma bond with this, where when you are in that part of this cycle where there's no contact and you're looking for it and you're looking for it and you're looking for it and there's no contact, then all of a sudden that suspicion and that mistrust, so exactly where they were getting your trust with the love bombing, now it's actually playing games with your head, playing games with every part of you. And now you're going, this is why you start to walk on the eggshells. You start to have that suspicion and go, well, what are they doing? Why aren't they giving me this attention? Why is there no communication? What's happening? Or what am I going to expect when they walk it through the door? Like there's all of these things that your mind starts to play tricks on you too, because you're looking for that. Your mind starts looking for that and searching for that. And then also wondering, like the fear comes in. Oh, well, because I haven't heard anything. It's so funny because most people say the phrase, no news is good news. Not when you're in these situations and not when you're in these relationships. No news starts to make your mind spiral out and go, what's happening? What is coming my way?
Yeah, because you never know. I mean, but you never have like anything specific, because it's going to be different every single time. The outcome will be different.
So then the fear starts and the anxiety and the overwhelm, all kinds of things like that. You just start to spin out. I also love how you brought up interrogation, because this is true. Interrogation is super common in these relationships, but it's not common when you're looking for the red flags. You're more than likely, you're not going to see it. I haven't seen it anywhere where it talks about interrogation.
Mm-mm.
And this interrogation it's big, because again, this is that manipulation. It's manipulation. You start to have, I don't even know exactly what to say about this, because there's been so much that we've talked about, but it's like interrogation. When you start to experience interrogation in this way, this is one of the biggest red flags. That's all I have to say about it. Is it's one of the biggest red flags whenever you're being interrogated and you're having to defend things that you're not even sure why you're defending, but you're finding yourself on this defensive side.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just going, why am I defending this? So ask yourself, why am I defensive? And also, am I valid in defending this? I mean, we've all been in arguments or whatever it is. We've all been in things where we're defending things. But a lot of times in these situations, it's stuff that doesn't matter. It's not relevant, but yet you find yourself defending it, like how long you took at a grocery store.
Right. And so what I'd like to say here is that as we are integrating the clear and as we are becoming more embodied, then it's noticing where those patterns are showing up. So we're going from this place of just coming into the awareness, and we want to move into, okay, we see these patterns, we know they're there. And so now what can we do different?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd also like to really encourage, if you have been following along with this workshop and you are in present time doing this with us, I'd encourage you to be in that state of observation right now, because right now that's exactly where you're supposed to be, is being in the state of observation, really noticing, what is the body doing? Is it expanding? Is it contracting? Is it leaning in? Is it leaning out? Are you feeling safe? Are you feeling unsafe? Like, just start to notice what you notice. And it can feel overwhelming here in the beginning, especially if you've been in a disassociated state for a while.
Yeah. And as you do notice all of these different sensations and you're noticing the patterns, and just, for example, with interrogation, if you can start to lean into resisting instead of not wanting to experience the repercussions, start leaning into resisting responding, or reacting, actually, not responding, but resist the desire, the drive to actually react, then you're slowly taking your power back. You're slowly not giving away your power, autonomy, and agency anymore. So you're coming back into a place of embodied sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to touch on this before we wrap up is, you will know if you are in this situation with interrogation when you feel emotionally drained. You feel emotionally drained, you're done. There's no point in standing up for yourself. There's no point in, like, you're starting to notice, again, kind of going back to that first part where we talked about, you're noticing, you're dismissing your own boundaries, you're dismissing your own feelings, you're minimizing hurtful actions, and you're just like, you're worn down. And that is by design. That is by design. When you're in these situations, is there is an intent to wear down, so that you just comply at this point. And I know this firsthand. I've experienced it many times. And I didn't recognize that when I got to the point where it was easier to just comply. That's when things got really dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, on that note,
note,
I would love to hear what other people are experiencing, because we have gone real deep, real fast as we're integrating this clear. And we knew it was going to be deep. we go deeper into all of this in the membership. And also when we were talking about the red flag course or workshop that we did, it's actually online as well. So if you're somebody who just wants to do it on your own self-study, you can do that there, or you can join us in the membership where we actually go super deep into all of this and we have these conversations, because it can get overwhelming, but it can also be so extremely freeing whenever you start to recognize. And if you start to have this in your awareness, then this means this is when something gets to change. This is when you do get to, the next steps are going to be making these other decisions and making the right decisions. But for now, it's just observing how does this feel in your body, and really getting an idea of what is your reality right now? What is the reality? So anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think that, again, just going back to how does it feel in your body? And I love what you just said. What is your reality, and what is the reality you desire to create moving forward?
Yeah, and if you haven't joined our email list, please do so, because in the times that we're not able to film, we still send out tools and playlists and different things for integration. This last week, we weren't able to film, so we sent out a playlist with an embodiment integration activity. So please sign up using the link below. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up and just say thank you. Thank you for joining us for another week. This is important. You showing up and doing this work with us is important. And if you do like this, please subscribe. We come out every single week. Like this if you enjoyed it. If you know there is somebody that you can share this with, please do that as well. Share this with somebody who may be in a situation. And then if you're interested, definitely inviting you to check out the membership group to dive deeper into this with the link below. So,
yes, we would love to have you. And please join the discussion.
Yeah, join the discussion. We'd also love to hear your comments below too. So thank you. We'll be back with more next week on integrating and diving deeper into this embodiment clear. Okay. Bye.
And live your life today.